looks very different. The ability to interact with colleagues and clients has changed drastically. I'm no longer in the training room. I'm doing all of my communication down the lens of the camera. And that requires a whole new skill set. And what I think is fascinating about this is the way that we've adopted this new way of working. These platforms and tools existed. They've existed for years and years and years, and yet there was nervousness and resistance about getting on board. And now we have no choice. And that's not going to change, even when the new normal starts to emerge and, you know, maybe we are going back into the office. There's still going to be, I believe, a huge amount of interaction that takes place down the lens, whether that's WebEx, whether that's webinar, or whether that's grabbing your phone and having a WhatsApp conversation with a colleague. So there's a whole new skill set that we need to get familiar with if we want to make the most of our impact, if we want to really be able to influence other people and take them on that journey with us. So for me today, it's really about sharing with you a toolkit. I'm going to chuck a load of stuff out there over the next 45 minutes. And my hope is that by the end of it, you'll have 3 or 4 things to be able to take back into your organization and use this afternoon. Let's not wait for this stuff. Let's actually get out there and start adapting. You know, feel free to change stuff on the call as we go through the course of the webinar. If you want to make adjustments, that's absolutely perfect with me. So in terms of who I am, I started my career as an actor. This is me playing a character called Virgil Tracy in a movie called Thunderbirds in 2004 with Sir Ben Kingsley and Bill Paxton. And that early career in front of the camera gave me a real insight into how to interact with the lens. And over the last 3 or 4 months, clients have been asking me more and more to delve into those skills and share some of the techniques that will really change your performance. And what I intend to do today is kind of pull back the curtain a little bit and allow you to understand what an actor does when in relationship to the camera, and what you can do in a business context to make sure that you come across in the best possible light. So I started that career as an actor. I moved into directing and then teaching, and for a while I was teaching at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and then I got asked by a business if I would come in and help them with their storytelling. And to be honest, I wasn't sure if the skill set, the tools that I had were necessarily that applicable to people in what I deemed to be the real world. But actually it was fascinating to see how quickly people were able to grab hold of them, adapt, and actually start to change their behavior. So for the last 10 years now, I've been working with corporates on things like storytelling, on business development, working with leadership teams and thinking about how they come across, how they sell the vision and values into an organization. And I'm really privileged because I absolutely love what I do. I run a company called Inflow. We work with businesses all over the world, and that has changed quite significantly for me in the last 3 months. I was meant to be traveling all over the place. And again, I've been able to pivot, and my team have been able to pivot, and we're able to deliver much of what we were doing before down the lens of the camera. So that's been really exciting for me to see, and to see how we've been able to do that. About a year ago now, I published a book called Impact, and much of what I'm going to be sharing with you is actually in the book. So if there are things that you want to dig into a little bit deeper after the webinar, then this is going to be a really good place to go and have a look. It's available on Amazon, and I've also done the Audible version. So if you're enjoying my dulcet tones and you want to have me in your ears, then that's available over on Audible too. So in terms of the way I want to structure things, there are essentially 3 elements to our time together today: the problem, the solution, and the plan. So I want to understand from you what you're having challenges with. Let's make this as specific to the people on the call as we possibly can. Then I'll start to share with you some solutions and some ideas around how you might rethink your virtual interactions. And finally, I want you to take away, as I said earlier, 2 or 3 things that you can put into action that are actually going to change your behavior as a result of spending this time together. So in terms of timing, we've got about 45 minutes, so I'll endeavor to get us all wrapped up by 1/4 the hour. And what I would love this to be is as interactive as possible. So please do ask questions. As we go through the webinar, if you've got things right on the tip of your tongue, then instead of opening your microphone and talking to me, just drop me a comment in the comments box and I'll monitor that. And then as we get to some strategic kind of Q&A moments as we go through, then I'm very happy to take questions. We're a small enough group that we should be able to manage opening up microphones, and we can talk to each other as we go through. So let's kick off with the problem. And as I alluded to, you know, this world of work has changed. We're facing different challenges now when we're communicating, whether that's internally or externally. So my question to you is, what are your biggest challenges with video meetings? What's different? Write me a question or a comment in the comments box. What's different? What are you struggling with? What would you like some help with? For many people, just appearing on camera is a whole new thing, but actually there may be, for some of you that are more experienced with these sorts of platforms, there may be other elements that you want to dig in. So I'll stop sharing the slides for a second, and I'll just dig in because I can see a few things coming in the chat. So Nikki's saying people not willing to put their webcams on in meetings. It's fascinating, isn't it? We kind of get this situation where we think, okay, everyone's used to this, and then all of a sudden people are like, oh, I'm not going to do it. Now, there are a couple of things you can do there. The first is you have to lead by example. So if you want people to have their webcams on, you better make sure that you've got your webcam on up front. But there's also something for me about how you frame all of these interactions. What information are you sending people in advance? Are you telling people this is going to be a video meeting? So you get people to be aware that there is some level of expectation. And then the other thing is just to ask. It's kind of slightly British, isn't it, that we feel it might be impolite to actually request that people turn their webcams on. But if you say, hey guys, great to have everyone on the call. I noticed a couple of people haven't got their webcams on right now. If you're able to turn that on, really appreciate it. It just allows us to connect better. You know, give them a reason, let them know why it's important, but also acknowledge that for some people it might be completely inappropriate. They might have their kids running around in the background. They might not feel able to do it. If that becomes repeat behavior, Nikki, I would suggest actually just picking up the phone and having a chat with the person that refers to, and saying, you know, what's going on? Is there anything I can help? And it depends as well on the different platforms. You know, Zoom, obviously you can put all the funky 3D Golden Gate Bridge and all of that sort of stuff in the background. On Microsoft Teams, you can just blur out what's going on behind you. And some of those things that people aren't aware of will help them, you know, maybe hide the background that they're a little bit kind of reticent about sharing. Anything else that people want to dig into? What are the big challenges for you right now in virtual meetings? Either drop me a message in the chat or unmute your microphone and talk to me. If you're on the call, I'm assuming that there is something that you want to look at.
Yeah, Dominic, I did put a question in, but I don't know if you can see it. So I always find challenging when I'm with clients is either everyone talking over each other or the big long pauses, and it's like, who's going to talk now? And I don't know if there's any way to kind of like somehow signal that with, I don't know, putting up a sign. I don't know what it is, but that's quite a big challenge, I think.
Go on. Sorry,
as I say, and I think it just depends on how you notice it gets better the more experienced people are with web stuff, but with video stuff. But yeah, I think that's a big one.
Absolutely. So I think there are a couple of things going on there. One is just getting used to digital tumbleweed, as I kind of call it. You know, you ask a question and then there's silence. And often that is just because people are nervous about the tech and they don't know how to interact, or they don't want to speak up because it's all weird. So I think you need to get used to creating space. And you'll notice, as I asked for the second time if there were any questions, I wasn't going to move on. I was just going to wait and see what comes in. So that there's something powerful about that, about giving people the time to furiously type into the chat box, or giving people time to find the unmute button so that they can participate. And then there's the second piece is around the framing, and I'll talk about this a little bit later on, but you can be very specific about how you want to interact with people. You can give people a heads up that I'm going to talk for 10 minutes and then I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe in a small group, I realize that sometimes not everyone gets heard, so I'd like to go around the room and give everyone the opportunity to speak. And then there are some kind of housekeeping things. In a big group, you could ask people to raise a hand, or put the hands up sign on, so that you've got to be a bit inventive, I think, about how you challenge, how you maintain that kind of balance. Paul saying an issue getting people truly engaged when there's a bigger group. I think there's something there, Paul, about energy. I think there's something there about the content, and we'll dig into that a little bit later on. And Asif saying feeling spontaneous and natural, also a problem face to face. I think the more you prepare and then let that preparation disappear and just think about connecting with the people on the call, the better. So it's all about creating connection, all about creating that rapport, and we'll dig into a couple of things that will help with that as we go on, Asif. We've got one more question. My question is around massive groups of participants. This morning we had 100 people on the call, and only our speakers were on the video. That's in those sorts of instances, you've got to find ways for audiences to interact. So whether that's putting up a poll, whether that's asking people to use the questions function, whether that's asking people to use the chat, and you need to teach people how to do those things early on. So when I have a big group, one of the first things I do is say, hey everyone, it's great to have you on the call. Would love to know where everyone's dialing in for. So just hit me in the chat box and tell me where you are. And then I start reading those things out. I'm like, we've got Bulgaria on the line, we've got Spain, fantastic. Oh, Rotherham, lovely to have you, just down the road from me. And all of that sort of stuff just helps create that connection and keep people on board. Marie, it's lovely to have you on the Zoom. Nice to see you. Our salespeople have been advised clients don't want normal rapport building on video meetings. They want to get straight to the point, e.g. not talking through an agenda. You're dealing with human beings, and you need to connect with human beings. And if I just turned on a video and tried to sell you something, to be honest, for most people that would put them off. So I would question the wisdom behind that statement. I think you need to make time for it, and then I think you need to be really conscious of when you change gear and actually move into the kind of main body of the conversation, and that can be in agreement with other people. It doesn't have to take long, but I think if you don't have some sort of rapport building, then actually you're very unlikely to close any sales. So have a look at some of the tools that I'm sharing over the course of the next 30 minutes or so, and see if you can kind of build some of those in. Okay, let's go back to the screen share, and let me take you through some of the main content. So in terms of how we communicate and how we communicate effectively, I think there are three pillars. The first is confidence, your willingness to show up and be seen, and therefore the confidence that creates in your audience. The second piece is connection, and that rapport building piece, and obviously that has changed as we work down the lens of the camera, but there are things that we can do to create that bond. And then the third thing is content. What do you say and how do you say it? And again, that has changed in this virtual setup. We can't be as long-winded. We do need to be punchier. People haven't got the attention span to stay on a Zoom meeting for 90 minutes. You know, we do need to think about keeping things short and to the point. And we need to think about how we tell a story and how we get people engaged with what we're actually saying. So in terms of solution, I'd like to take you through each of those three categories and offer up some tools and some ideas. So we'll kick off with confidence. And the first thing I want to say about confidence is that we need to acknowledge the mind-body link. Now, I don't know about you, but by the end of 4 or 5 hours on Zoom, sometimes in back-to-back meetings, if you see me at about 5 o'clock, I'm like this on that desk over there. And obviously that makes it very difficult for me to make an impact with everyone else. It means that my body language is maybe not telling the story that I want it to. So you may have noticed that I'm actually at a standing desk right now, and there is a reason for that, because that allows me to bring energy to the call. Now, I do have one-to-one meetings where I'll find myself just sitting down, but to be honest, I would say I'm doing about 70% of my Zoom calls standing up. But because of that, I'm also being really conscious about how many Zoom calls I do. So let's not just blanket say now everything has to be on video, because we used to pick up the phone before, so we can still pick up the phone again. And it's not always best to be face-to-face, so we have to be specific about why we're using that. And I think we need to think about the kind of energy that we're bringing to these situations. I'm just kind of looking around our virtual room. There's a few sort of slumped shoulders and all of that sort of stuff. Everyone just have a bit of a stretch for me. Come on, just kind of move your bodies. Kind of, obviously, if you've got any historic injuries, please take care of yourselves. Don't do anything just because I said so. But just notice what happens when you move your body around a bit. It just feels good, doesn't it? We're not walking down to the kitchen as much. We're not going to the water cooler. We're not walking over to Bob's desk to tap him on the shoulder. We're in this sedentary position. So even if you're not going to stand up, think about just moving around. Think about, can you go for a quick walk around the garden in between these conversations to get that energy level back up? Because the more space you take up, the more present you seem for your audience, the more you'll be able to communicate your message and get it to land. And it cues into the vocal energy that you bring. Again, I'm imagining that you guys are in the room with me. I'm bringing as much vocal energy to this as we would be if we were sitting around a table together. I think there's a danger sometimes when we're on a call and we're in our own space that we just sort of start to talk to ourselves and we kind of drop out from actually delivering our message to the audience. So really think about how you commit to that energy level to make your audience sit up and pay attention. And for me, that is level 8 energy. So imagine a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is I've got the man flu, I can't get out of bed. 10 is like 2 cans of Red Bull, packet of M&Ms, like slightly mad, bit over the top. Like, we don't want that. That's might be entertaining, but it's not something that we can maintain. So we want to think about level 8, which is just moving into the higher range of the spectrum. And why? Because I think most of us are really bad at calibrating. So if I said to you, bring a level 7, most of you would bring a level 6. Level 5 gets you across the road without getting run over. Yeah, that's not appropriate if we want to change people's behavior. Communication is a transfer of energy between two parties. So we've got to make sure that we're responsible for that energy transfer. And that means lifting that energy a little bit. Another reason for this, and this is something that is very kind of relevant from my acting background, is that the camera sucks your energy. So if you don't bring a little bit more to the party, you will come across as having brought less. And it was something very early on I had to learn as an actor. It's not about being bigger or louder or more kind of expressive. It's about being more focused and making sure that you're directing that energy towards the lens. So really think about the energy level that you bring to these situations. And because of that, think about the duration of time that you're spending on these calls. Why is the meeting 30 minutes? Is it just because Outlook told you? Yeah. Is it an hour because Outlook gives you an hour or 30? If you don't need 30, take 20, tell people it's going to be 20, and then go and have 10 minutes to get a cup of coffee and walk around the garden. And if you're going to do anything that's over, I mean, 60 minutes, we're pushing it, 90 minutes, that's it. And then we've got to take breaks. So I'm talking to board level executives who are saying, we're used to having a 4-hour board meeting and we've just brought that online. And I'm like, that's just a car crash. We need to think about doing an hour, taking a 15-minute break so that people can maintain their focus. We have to expend a lot more energy on a virtual meeting than we do in a physical meeting, because we're trying to read signals that are much smaller. Look at me, I'm a tiny little box right now on your screen, and then there's this massive slide, but I'm a tiny little box, and there's all of this distraction going on as well. You've got your emails popping up. How many people have got their phone right next to them? We've got to be able to keep people's attention. Therefore, shorter meetings at higher energy levels and lots of preparation is going to be required. Yeah, be a good Boy Scout. Do the homework. Make sure that you have a plan and that you're not just calling people together and sort of winging it. Because if you do, then the energy level by the end of the call will absolutely disappear. So, talk to me. What kind of takeaways are you having so far? What's landing? What questions have we got? Either talk to me in the chat box or unmute your microphones, and let's have a little bit of a chat. I'll see if I can catch up with some of this chat here.
Yeah, Dominic. So Jill and I last week we were sharing some office space up until about 2 weeks ago. It's not that we don't now share it; we don't have the space anymore. We implemented all meetings have to be, even if they're not web meetings, all meetings have to be conducted standing up.
Right.
And the difference it made in how efficient we were in the meeting was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. I mean, we just cut down on all of the chit chat and the going off at tangents, and that's me obviously doing that. It made such a difference doing the standing up. And so for some reason I hadn't really thought of it in the context of web meetings. I guess because I haven't got a stand-up desk at home, so I obviously need to get one of those
I mean, get a stand-up desk, or to be honest, get your phone and go and put it on the bookshelf so that the camera's at eye level, or get the ironing board out. I mean, do a risk assessment first, but get the ironing board out and put some boxes on it, and find a way. There are ways, and it needn't be every meeting either. Be strategic. Okay, I've got a pitch coming up this afternoon, or I've got a board meeting coming up this afternoon, or I'm asking my boss to sign off on X, Y, and Z. Yeah. For your catch up with your colleague, it might be completely appropriate to have a cup of tea and to sit in a comfy chair, but think about it. Don't just be unconscious about that behavior.
I also, just to finish off, I also really loved why is the meeting the length that it is, because Outlook tells you, and that's exactly what it is, right? Because it automatically, or Apple or Google or whatever, they
whatever.
You an hour, right? You have to force yourself to make it 30 minutes, and I think you can't even default it back to 15. You have to physically go in and change. And I love that, because it's exactly what happens.
But you can default the invite you can change the invite to 21 if you want to. We just don't tend to do it. So, Jill, I saw a hand there.
Yeah, no, I was just going to make a comment on the standy-uppy thing as well. It made us much more creative. And I used to find myself literally like pacing up and down next to the window. But that's when we had our best ideas. It really was. It made a huge difference.
Yeah. It's, there's a huge amount of research linked to physical movement and imagination and actually how we perform. So find a solution that works for you, but do be conscious of the solution you choose. Don't just sit there and accept that you have to be sitting in your chair for the whole day. There are other options available. I've done quite a lot of meetings over the course of the last few months on my phone, going out for a walk. Put your earbuds in and go and have a conversation with people. Change your environment. Change the way you think. Fantastic. All right, let's crack on with a little bit more content then. I think Paul's just said focus is a great tip for any type of meeting. Dragging out any type of meeting for too long is an energy killer. He's also said, what type of Bluetooth gear would you suggest so that you have the potential to move around a bit without using sound quality? To be honest, I've got, this is a Jabra headset. They're quite expensive, but I do quite a lot of this stuff, and I want that ability to move around and maintain the sound quality. A pair of Apple earbuds will do it. Have a play around. If you want the link to this, I'll share my email address later, so I'm happy to share that with you. Good. Let's have a quick look then at connection and how we change the way that we connect with our audience. Now, the camera is obviously where it's at, and you guys are in the main doing a pretty good job, but we are seeing quite a lot of this sort of stuff on meetings. Now, it's lovely that I've got a skylight, but it's really not helping in any way, shape or form me influence you and you know, allow you to see me and connect with me. So really think about where you place the camera. You'll notice that the camera is eye level with me right now. So I've got a standing desk, but I've also got the laptop on a laptop stand so that the camera is eye level. And I am thinking about filling the screen. So I am in the film business, it's called a medium close-up. So there's a little bit of space above my head and you can see my shoulders. And then when I gesticulate, you can see my hands. And the reason for that is that it makes you feel like I'm sitting across the table from you. So this is the same sort of level of movement and engagement that you would see if I was sitting in the room with you. If I get too close, it's a bit weird and you're kind of looking up my nose. And if I'm too far away, then again, we get disconnected. So think about that kind of medium close-up where you've got that little bit of space above your head, cameras at eye level, and you've got that space to gesticulate, and your hand gestures can be seen. And again, that's going to be really important in the way that you create that connection with your audience. The other thing that you may have noticed is that I'm making quite a lot of eye contact with you, and the way I'm doing that is by looking directly down the lens of the camera. Now, of course, there are moments when I want to look down at the chat screen and everything like that, that's fine. But predominantly, I'm bringing the focus back up and coming straight down the lens. And if I'm talking with someone one-to-one, then I'm probably doing about 70% of looking down the lens when I'm trying to make a point. And then I'm making about 30% of the eye movement is looking at them and trying to judge their reaction. If I start looking at my slides, or worse, at my keyboard, you start to see my head and you start to see my eyelids, and instantly we're not really connected. So be really aware, especially if you're sitting at a desk. You know, we kind of get into this sort of stuff and we're having a conversation, and again, that we're not building rapport right now. It's just not happening in the same way as if I am fully available to you and looking down the lens of the camera. And another thing that's going to help that is actually how you are lit. Now, I've got a bit of a kind of studio setup in here because I'm doing a lot of this sort of broadcast stuff. This is me with my lights on, and let me just turn them off. And you'll see that that's quite a big difference. And the main issue with this is that you can't see my facial expressions as much. So therefore, we're losing that sense of connection. So as I start to bring the lights back in, you're seeing more, and therefore we're able to connect better. Now, I'm not expecting you to go off to Amazon and spend loads of money on lights, but you can, for about 20 quid, get something like this. Just reach around there carefully. So this is a ring light, he says, trying to unwieldily build it and bring it into shot. But there's something like that, which costs you about £20, and is a really good option. Just to destroy the whole setup. And the other thing that is absolutely vital, even if you're not going to go out and buy new equipment, is just to think about where you are in relationship to the light source in the room. So if you are sitting with your back to the window and the camera is looking out of the window, then you get this big white flare behind you and your face goes into shadow. So the best thing you can do is just turn around and position yourself so that you're facing the window, so that that natural light is coming towards you and the camera is pointing away from the light source. And then if you don't want to go and spend 20 quid on Amazon, just grab a bedroom lamp or an angle poise or something and just bring a little bit of extra light onto your face if you can, especially as we get into autumn and the light, you know, the light starts to get dimmer. Just having the normal ceiling light in your office isn't going to work as well. So do think about how well you're lit, and also consider the quality of the microphone. So the audio is hugely important in this, and we've touched on that a little bit in terms of earbuds or a headset like this. But even just plugging in your headphones from your phone into your computer, so that we've got that directional mic happening, and people aren't being distracted by the dog barking in the background or the kids running around or whatever. Just getting the mic a little bit closer to your mouth is going to stop all of that background noise, and it will also stop that echo loop. So what happens when you start to get echo is that essentially the speakers are picking the microphone is picking up the speakers, and it's going back through the internet and making a horrible din. If you wear a headset or if you wear earphones, you're going to cut that out. So do think about the quality of the audio and the quality of the lighting in terms of how you create that connection with your audience. And this goes to Marie's point a little bit earlier, you do need to create a bit of a party atmosphere. I'm absolutely kind of wedded to this idea that if you want people to engage, you've got to give them something to engage for. You know, if you're coming over to my house for dinner this evening, you know, you'd come to the front door. Obviously you can't, we'd be social distanced, but you'd come in and I'd take your coat and I'd offer you a glass of wine or a drink, and I'd say, you know, here are the nibbles, and then I'd introduce you to someone else, and I'd sort of play that hosting role. So if you are setting up a meeting, do engage people, do spend the first couple of minutes while you're waiting for people to sign in, rather than just having that kind of awful silence, or just saying, I'm just going to mute my I'm just going to mute my microphone while we wait for everyone to join. Make a bit of small talk to people about what they've done at the weekend, or find out where they are, find out how things are going, so that you create a little bit of atmosphere. And one way of doing that for larger groups is to use people's names. So if you are jumping into scenarios where you don't know people, but you do have, you know, as you roll over their Zoom thing, you've got their name, then use people's names, because that allows people to feel heard, feel seen. Great technique for just making sure that everyone feels involved. Okay, so that's connection. Any questions, any kind of takeaways from that so far? Either talk to me or pop it in the comments.
Feeling very self-conscious about the lighting situation in my house now. Thank you. And I lined up because when we were waiting for everyone to join, because it's pouring with rain and it's gone dark, I put the light up, the blind up, and now I feel like there's just this one side, like Phantom of the Opera or something. One side of my face is you know, like this.
It's not too bad, but it will be in a couple of hours, so you've just got to be aware of that.
I've got an angle poise here, but if I change it, I feel like I'm being interrogated. So
yeah,
I need to think about lighting.
Think about it. I mean, if you put the angle poise behind the camera and just have the light coming directly at you, then that's probably a good way to
blinding myself. That's why I need one of those ring lights that you've got.
Dominic. And you can adjust that, and there's not so much kind of light there. So yeah, that's kind of prime things to think about. As if saying everyone is in a private room on their own, can you deliver a shared experience for the audience? I think you can, as if I think it's about how you use the tools. So, you know, Zoom is really good with the breakout rooms to be able to send people off and have smaller conversations. And I'm even talking to clients about that for their weekly team meetings. You know, get everyone together, set the agenda, ask a question, send everyone away for 5 minutes in groups of 2 or 3, and then bring people back. And, you know, think about the kind of rhythm that you can create for that, because the more people get used to a way of working, the less resistance they have to it. But I do think, you know, anything you can do to create that shared experience is gonna make people feel more connected to you. Good. All right. Let's share a few last ideas then about content. So, in terms of content, I think one thing that is vital is that you need to be more fireman. And what does that mean? I think we can be a little bit too polite in the way that we orchestrate virtual meetings, and actually that creates uncertainty for our audience. If my house was burning down right now, the first fire person that arrived on the scene, I would want them to say something like, "Sir, the house is on fire, move over there now." What I don't want is someone knocking on my door and saying, "Excuse me, sir, I'm not sure if you noticed, but there's smoke coming out of the third floor window. And I was, you know, just curious about whether you might be open to moving to the other side of the road." I need to be told what to do. And if I'm told what to do, then I understand what the rules of the game are. So essentially, we really need to pay attention to how we frame things. We need to think about making those rules explicit. You don't want someone thinking that they're playing tennis and someone else thinking that they're playing rugby. You've got to tell people how things are going to work. So it might be that you say, "Hey, everyone, it's great to have you on. I'd love it, as I did at the beginning of this, if you could turn on your cameras, but keep your microphones muted." Yeah, and all of a sudden, hey presto, a few people that hadn't got their cameras turned their cameras on, and now we're in a different setup. I told you that I wanted you to use the chat function to ask me questions, but also at strategic points, I was going to open up the microphones. So I'm kind of making those things explicit. You may be saying, if you're delivering a presentation, for example, you may be saying, "Look, I'm gonna deliver a presentation for about 10 minutes. I know that there'll be lots of questions, but I'd like you to keep those questions to the end." Or you may say, "Please use the chat function." You may say, "Hey guys, this is really important that we catch up and find out how everyone's doing. So I'd like this to be a free-for-all. You know, please open your mics, tell me what's happening." Or you might say, "I'm conscious that not everyone has had a voice in the last few meetings, so I just want to go around and check in with you individually. If you're fine and there's nothing you want to add, just say, 'Fine, nothing I want to add,' and then go around and talk to people." So really pay attention to how you conduct the meeting. You know, think of yourself in that role, that you get to choose who comes next, what happens. And if you're not chairing the meeting, then you still have the opportunity to set the frame for the interaction that you're going to have. So if you get asked to report for 3 minutes on a topic, you can say, "Thanks, Bob. Yeah, as you said, I'm going to talk you through the latest acquisition figures. I know that people might have questions, and I want this to be really interactive. So if you just raise your hand, I'll keep an eye out for what's going on, and I'll bring everyone in." You know, you do get that opportunity to lead. The more prescriptive you are, the more you tell people what to expect, the easier it will be for them to play along. And actually, the more at ease they'll be, so the more likely they'll be to actually interact with what you're doing. The other thing is keeping slides simple. And there's almost no point in me talking right now, because most of you are not going to be satisfied until you've read through to bullet point number 6. And, you know, all the time I'm seeing this, people putting loads and loads of information up there. And of course, the audience just want to read it. And as I've alluded to, I'm this tiny little postage stamp. My slide is massive right now. So what are you going to focus on? Think about using less text. Think about using transitions. If you've got 6 bullet points, I'd say cut them down to 3 personally. But if you need 6, then use 6 transitions so that each one comes up as you're talking about it, and you're controlling the narrative for your audience. If you're sharing lots of data and graphs and all of that sort of stuff, don't overwhelm people. Think about the Steve Jobs School of Presentation. This thing is going up. Now let me tell you why. And if you do have to kind of talk people through the detail, then just tell them, say, "Look, in a moment, I'm going to share a slide with you. There's lots of stuff on there. It might be a spreadsheet or it might be a graph. What I'm going to do is I'll pop it up. I'm going to mute my microphone for a minute just to allow everyone to digest it. And then I'm going to talk you through the key points." Put the slide up. mute the microphone, and away you go. So think about how you control your audience's attention rather than allowing them to be distracted. And also, I think this is absolutely key. We have to get better at storytelling. We have to just key into some of those basic concepts that light us up. Why do we go and watch James Bond movies? They're all the same, and yet we go and pay our money every time to go and see James nearly die, not quite die, and then almost live happily ever after. So we kind of keyed into that narrative, that idea of beginning, middle, end, of past, present, future. If you can take people on a narrative journey, you're much more likely to keep their attention. So find opportunities to tell stories. Think about your presentations and your meetings as stories within themselves, as little mini episodes of Netflix, and you're much more likely to get people playing along and being engaged. I'd love to hear the last few kind of takeaways and tips. I'm going to give you a second to have a think about those. Let me know if there are any questions. While you're formulating those, I just want to get you to have a think about your plan. What is it that you want to do differently, having spent this 45-minute session with me? What are you going to commit to? Don't make it kind of wishy-washy, I kind of like to. What are you going to commit to doing differently? It might be just one thing, but if you do that thing, it will transform the way that you show up in these sorts of platforms. You don't have to make that declaration to me live on air. I'm not going to ask you for that homework, but I would encourage you to do that for yourself. Set yourself a diary reminder for 2 weeks' time, or send yourself an email that's going to pop into your inbox. And if you've done it, then great, you can give yourself a pat on the back. And if you haven't, it's a great way of refocusing and making sure that you're going to take some action as a result of being on this webinar. As I said at the beginning, if you've enjoyed this and there are other things you want to dive into, then Impact is a good place to start. That's on Amazon and on Audible. And if you want to get in contact with me, those are my contact details. So Dominic@inflow.global. I'm also on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and I generally post about a video a week on those platforms with top tips and all of that sort of stuff. So I'd love to connect with you on there. And if you have suddenly an epiphany moment at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, by all means, just send me an email. Don't send it at 3 o'clock, wait until 9. But I'm very happy to answer any questions that you have. So I'm going to stop the screen share there. I'm going to come back to you guys and see if there are any questions or anything that anyone wants to add. And then in the next couple of minutes, we will wrap things up. So what's landed? What questions do people?
I'd be happy just to take a moment, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Hi, Dominic. My name's Leora. I'm actually calling in from Cape Town, South Africa.
Hey, fantastic.
And one of the beautiful things about, I suppose, about virtual and COVID is the ability to check in across the world. So just wanted to say that, you know, right now, just as a disclaimer, I'm in the car with my husband and my 2 kids, and I really wanted to listen to this call, and I thought it would only be fair to turn my video on and say that, you know, anything is possible, really, when
Absolutely.
You just be honest in the moment. So thank you very much for a very informative 60 minutes. I think it's been almost, and I really gained a lot out of your sharing.
Pleasure, thank you. And I think that's a great example there. We're now used to the fact that stuff is happening. You know, I've got a 6-year-old in the room next door being homeschooled right now. She may walk in at any moment, but that's kind of cool. It doesn't matter. And I'm seeing people deal with those sorts of things really well. So thank you for joining us from South Africa. Lovely to have you there.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments people want to make before we wrap things up? Paul.
Hi, Dominic. Yeah, it was a really good talk. Great tips and stuff, particularly the sort of lighting, which, as you can see, mine isn't fantastic. So it's something I need to work on. But also just the fact that to look down the actual camera. I've noticed in meetings that I'm actually focusing on the person and don't realize that means you're going like that there when you're doing that. So it was a great tip, and yeah, really appreciate it. And yeah, your energy and everything comes across. So great tips in that respect. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Paul. Just a thought on that in terms of where, you know, looking down the camera, one thing that you really should think about is repositioning the other people on screen. So either looking at a grid view so that you've got everyone there, or moving to kind of speaker view. But if you're slide sharing and people come up in the little boxes, just drag them up towards the camera, and then you'll always be looking at least near the lens, if not down the lens as well. Fabulous. Anything else anyone wants to add before we wrap things up?
I just wanted to say, Dominic, thanks so much for that. Really great. You really frame like the foundational stuff that we always need to, you know, if that's just ready to go, we can put our energies into the actual delivery.
Absolutely.
And I think it's really great because, you know, being on stage is trying to replicate the real world for a big audience. And if anything, now we're retreating into the private one-to-one conversation, but for a big audience. Yeah. And that's the dilemma. That has been really good. Sparked a few thoughts for me because, you know, everyone's in a room on their own, but I still want to have the improv of an audience getting a laugh together. Yeah. And it's really hard. So about, you know, listening to radio artists is really helping me out at the moment because they're so intimate. Getting into your, you let them into your front room all the time, don't you? Of course. I think there's so much to learn. So thanks again for those tips. Really helpful.
Pleasure. Fabulous. Caroline, I'm going to throw it back over to you then, if you want to wrap things up.
Yeah, no, that was brilliant, Dominic. I've just moved the screen right up to the top of my. I'm looking at. Well, I'm not quite high enough for the camera. I need to sort that out. So either I need my chair higher, or I don't know what it is. But anyway, a really, really useful. Thank you so much, Dominic, for your time. Really appreciate it. Hopefully everyone, I think everyone's got something from that. So I guess with that, we'll wrap up and say thank you ever so much for everybody's time. And yeah, I'll post the session in the group and see if anyone wants to, who wasn't able to be here live, can watch it, because I think there's some great tips in there. So what's my first thing I'm doing? Committing to, I'm going to sort my lighting out. That has
excellent.
To be down. But also most of the meetings I'm on, people are on video, but I am going to do that. Instead of getting annoyed with people, I'm going to actually say to them, if you can be on video, then pop it on. I'm going to start that framing. I think that's really good.
Excellent.
All right. Well,
okay. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining me.
See you.